Thanks for joining. I just want to say from the get-go, I'm not fully recovered from a nasty chest cold. So there's a slight chance you may need to endure some kind of inopportune coughing moments. Nothing long, nothing dramatic, but I'm on the med progressively. Will is sending me a carton, I believe, of ginger shots to help speed up my recovery. Right, Will?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A
Yeah.
box of chicken noodle soup. Wait a minute. Just like my mom made, but wait, was it? No, it's no chicken or no noodles. Are you vegan or gluten free? I never remember.
Right, vegan. That's the one.
Ah,
All right. Well, hey, you're the food guy, and but it's true. You took us some really nice restaurants in our stay in what was it, Wilmington, Delaware, or North Carolina? Right
not
back at you.
fair.
Sometimes,
Not
yeah,
fair.
yeah. So we were all food preferences and restrictions fully accommodated in today's 30-minute session. It's the fourth webinar in a series that MB, who unfortunately will not be joining us today, I believe due to a case of, what was it, Caribbean holiday or something like that. Lucky guy. So it'll just be me today, MC, and I'll be doing the was like I said, like the fourth webinar in clinical data operations for health plan quality managers. And today we'll be discussing data lineage and validations. So as usual, I like to level set, but especially today as there's several new people on the webinar. In our first session, we provided a strategic analysis of payer financial, regulatory, and operational challenges, including top-line revenue pressures, M&As. I guess that's good or bad. I suppose that depends on where you fall in the consolidation. Right, Will?
Good observation, MC.
Yes. All right. Now, it all comes down ultimately to one thing. You need to do more things, some of which unfortunately are very complicated, and you need to do it with less money. No problem, right? So I want to call out Lauren Daiuto on the right here. She published what I think was a really insightful and clear strategic analysis for our industry entitled System Overhaul in Motion. This report is really foundational to my thinking on where we are and how modernizing data operations really must be part of every payer competitive strategy. And Margaret, I provided the link if you can provide that report, the link to that chat or to that report in the chat. See, it's also recovering my brain from a week of a chest cold. So speaking of top line and bottom line pressures, you may have seen this article or the news announced recently, just here in our health payer space. Just last week, United Health Group's stock recorded single largest one-day price drop in years. According to Forbes, it was due simply to, and I love this quote, a web of, regulatory tweaks aimed at curbing overpayments, or I like to say more brutally, replacing Medicare Advantage's customary 2 to 3% annual increase with a 0.09% increase starting when? Only next year, so plenty of time to get that sorted out. So the threats are there, but on the more positive side, we also addressed opportunities that can be derived from leveraging these darn economic pressures and government compliance mandates. So to address that, we would like to focus on the following: reducing latency, complexity, and third-party custodial risk by prioritizing connections to data channels directly to the authoritative source, so the EHR typically. A driving migration in your organization towards de jure formal standards like FHIR, and also instituting modern data governance frameworks that use dynamic dashboard management tools and provide clear declarations of ownership and accountability. And finally, hopefully all these conditions and new technologies will motivate our industry to finally get serious about data quality by using such standards and frameworks. Okay, in our second webinar, we discussed the principles of data management, starting with data governance, which we see here represented as the hub of the Dama Wheel's 11 knowledge areas. Now, what is data governance? I think these questions come up and probably have to keep coming up quite often in organizations. It's the orchestration of people, processes, and technologies to ensure the security and quality of an organization's data assets. So it provides structure and accountability. I like the sound of those to the process and tools used to optimize the quality and ultimately the usability of the data assets. And really, folks, foundational to data governance is a data inventory, which records the metadata for all possible data sources in ideally, again, a dynamic platform that enables reliable business and technical insights. So metadata, in our third webinar, MB and I discussed metadata specifically in more detail and metadata management. So metadata management really is quite simply just data about data. I also want to call out the metadata you'll see here is one of Dhamma's 11 knowledge areas over left area. And AHIMA actually defines it as descriptive data about other data that creates clear understanding of their meaning and produces information of greater reliability. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but data management actually is the system and processes for documentation and management of metadata to maximize its quality, usability, and value. So let's talk a little bit more about metadata as we segue into data lineage. So when I think about metadata, I like to use the product development framework of 5 Ws along with what I say is Mr. How. So for example, who entered the clinical data? What is the data? Is it clinical or administrative? Is it lab results? And then from where did it originate or transfer? When did the clinical events in the data set occur? Or really, why is the data even relevant to the stakeholder or user? And then how was the data modified or formatted? So I don't think it'll take you too long to recognize that you iterate through these three questions across many data sources and channels and attributes can really give an overwhelming number of possibilities really quickly. So especially without a framework or shared taxonomy. So just like everything, we have to start simple and add in more data elements and granularity over time. Okay, so, oh, this is the slide. Just your friendly webinar reminder, Will, right? You're gonna take this?
Um, you know, you just can't, it's you get what you pay for, but you need to understand that data management is not IT's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility.
That's right. Very stern. Yeah, we need to take this seriously. And I think that there's a tendency sometimes to clearly delineate that, oh, that's an IT issue, so I will leave and delegate to them. And that's a business issue. I will leave that and delegate to business. But there's a really nice overlap in particular in data management. And that's part of the reason I'm very passionate about this particular area. So let's start from the bottom. Given the foundational role of data storage in the data infrastructure, there are, of course, data quality metrics that the IT teams use to manage the security and reliability of these data at rest. So like the validity of a value of an attribute in a data table, or the null, not null completeness constraints, referential integrity checks are some of my favorites. But there's also data quality metrics for data in transit. So like member matching, format conformance test, and reconciliations as it leaves or arrives, or as locals like to say, as it hops from systems or between systems or models. So incidentally, as we are talking about data quality, I wanted to note that we will be delaying our talk for the next talk until March 3rd. And you may be asking, so why the delay? Well, it's because we have invited, and he has agreed to join us, and I'm very excited about it, Charlie Harp, CEO of Clinical Data Architecture and esteemed. Well, I would say Charlie's rather esteemed. Wouldn't you say so?
Indeed, very, very indeed. How we got him, I don't know. I don't think we can afford this on this series.
Right. Well, no doubt he's an expert in clinical data quality, and he'll be providing an overview of the PIQI, or Patient Information Quality Improvement Framework, during that session. And Peaky, incidentally, is a data quality framework, as you might have guessed, but he has developed that along with several other industry experts that is now invalid as a standard at HL7. Now, Margaret, I think I also provided that link to that HL7 page you see here in front of you, and you can click there and you can find out more information if you like to before ahead of the March 3rd meeting that we have scheduled. Okay, so let's keep ourselves in data quality. And I'm sorry to have to be the one to break it to all of you. It was a big impact when I heard it as well. But there is just no unified theory of data quality. Dimensions are variable, like those examples you see here above. It depends really on a number of different factors, and they will have to be adjusted for each of those particular factors. So let's use this example we have. So these dimensions you see are correctness, completeness, correctness, concordance, plausibility, and currency. These will vary really in name and number across the different frameworks. And in fact, you can even create your own framework, and I think many of us do ultimately. But ideally, your framework or frameworks really should be part of a shared and accountable governance, at least locally. But ideally, it also aligns with, say, an ANSI or SDO governance standard like the PKI framework. We know that they're tools, and fortunately, they're not all just hammers. So your framework really has to be sensitive to your industry, to the regulations, organization, domain, and use cases. So as an example, like I said before, the 5 dimensions above are the ones that offers Weiskopf and Wang recommended in 2013 as validated methods for data quality assessment of secondary use of data for clinical research purposes. And you may recall from one of our prior webinars that that is actually the highest bar of set or bias setting or bar for data quality in healthcare. Okay, now without giving away too much of the ending, the PKI framework also includes dimensions of availability, accuracy, conformity, and plausibility to measure and improve the portability and reusability of high quality clinical data across different systems, irrespective of the data source. So the applications of PKI framework are very different, say, than the applications of those that would be applied by Weiskopf and Wang. So I'm really, just note, I'm hypothesizing that conformity aligns with concordance. Of course, we'll get that confirmation or not with Charlie next month. Okay. New LinkedIn follow on Wernfeld, whose LinkedIn page I've provided here is really a rather frequent poster on all things data governance. Some of those on the call may also follow him. He writes quite well, but he also does a lot of whiteboard graphics, which I find, like this one here in front of you, really help to simplify the complexity of data governance while not oversimplifying, should I say. Now, in this example, you'll see in layer 3, I have highlighted or called out anomaly detection, as well as schema validation, which we may recall in other discussions about FHIR resource, meet your conformance schema. And I hope you guys get along perfectly, because if any aspect of that conformance test comes out differently or comes out as an anomaly, it'll create a notification about that. It's one of the values of schema validation. But both of those are actually well addressed by the PKI framework. So using John's layer model, we can increase the value impact of your organization data quality efforts by implementing data lineage tracking and tracing, along with metrics for freshness monitoring. I love that one, Will. Freshness monitoring, which you just used it recently. I saw that on LinkedIn, which apparently seems to be the latest derivative of timeliness. I guess I'm just kind of old school. It'll take some time for me to adopt freshness monitoring. I think we all generally get the semantic of it. Now, data lineage actually turns out to be a highly effective and really, hence I will say, well-established best practice for achieving and demonstrating auditability of our data assets to various users and stakeholders. And I like to think of tracking as data as it moves from the origin to the use case along that data lineage pathway, but then tracing as going from the use case back to the primary source So both should really be viable on the data lineage, but they really do ultimately serve different goals. And we can discuss that further in questions or potentially in the next one or two meetings or webinars that we have scheduled. But in its simplest definition, data lineage just maps the complete end-to-end journey of the instance of a data set. But it must also document metadata in an observable manner on the movement of data across the systems and models, here we go, as it hops between all as well. This transformations performed on these data sets as they move through data pipelines and channels. So you'll see this example, we have data movements, hops, and transformations, or mappings, we'll call so for short, and then data timeliness, or yes, freshness, frequency, and delay. And all of those, again, require accurate metadata. So there it is again, for freshness monitoring, capturing metadata on the expected and actual frequency of data set refreshes, as well as data on time delays embedded in those data sets. For example, the data set arrives at your organization typically 2 days or 48 hours after the latest date of service in the file. That's very valuable information, metadata to have, especially when there's a divergence of what you expect to see and what you actually do receive. Now, these data, again, should all be observable to be useful, and hence really must be documented and validated for a range of technical and business requirements, including data pipeline. That's another one I like to see more often. We use data pipeline and channel interchangeably in our group. Performance, as well as more broadly, the overall composition of data assets and where you say so to identify to optimize your data channels by lower performance data pipelines. Okay, so come back now again to the three data infrastructure layers: the data management, transformation, and database compute. And we will see that here also we can apply the 5 whys and Mr. How. So what's the method that we use to perform data discovery and profiling? I like to really think of that again as maybe a review of what we do with data tracing as well as data tracking. So tracing, again, moving back. So if we know we need to have a use case that fulfills these requirements, it requires these type of data elements, we can start to then go up to the data sources and start to profile and discover what is available and which one is best suited to that particular use case. That's something we leverage quite a bit. Is we already have the established use case. We need to sort out where the data are coming from and then build that direction. Also, for business user in particular, I think it's really important at least at the data element level or data source level, ensure its suitability overall and ultimately its usability to ensure that the inferences that you're making from that are reliable. Okay, so I get tripped up on this a lot on today, especially, but certainly on other days also, that there's a lot of interchangeability, we'll say, about data lineage and data provenance. I like to say they're same, but different. They really are focused again on where data come from and what happened to it along the way. But my experience, they should really differ in some scope, focus, and application. And here you'll see data lineage is really focused on data engineering. So we may think of it as a little bit more IT focused. So primarily tracks the flow and transformations of data as it moves through various systems or processes, creating this map where we talked about end-to-end journey from source to destination that ultimately should help in debugging and compliance, but also just understanding dependencies. So when you build use cases, say from that data, you have an understanding of the impact and even changes that you may have made earlier in upstream data sources and what the impact of those changes will be on downstream use cases. Data provenance is actually, I would say, data lineage plus. And it tends to include historical ownership and contextual metadata, such as we said, the who and the why of data changes, as well as authenticity, even potentially certifiable or verifiable certificates to ensure trustworthiness of the data in use cases. Okay, and then for those of you that are following or tracking FHIR mandates, you will have already noted that starting on January 1st of this year, all patient access APIs are required or should support or shall support US CDI version 3, including the fire provenance resource. So there it is. Provenance is playing an increasingly important role in our compliance as well as in our strategic competitive advantages. So really a lot much more to come on that next month when we do deep dives on data quality and then a little bit deeper dive on data lineage and provenance and validation when Charlie Hart joins us. So hopefully you have, I'll say, despite my off day, you have some solid background for understanding the data lineage, its role in data quality. And you can start to explore with us again next month. And then actually also do a plug for March 17th, when I'll be joined by Velux founder and CEO Michael Klotz, who will talk more about use cases, ROI, and we can see how really bringing together the techniques for validating data quality, building a data metadata registry, and incorporating data lineage can really help you build out and maximize strategic advantage of the benefits of or monitoring your data quality assets, your data assets and your data quality. Okay. I should stop there before I make any more mistakes. All right, guys. I think we have time now. We usually try to do about 20 to 23 minutes, and we will have time for questions and certainly other areas of discussion that we can bring up. I'll have Margaret, you may need to help me identify if there's any questions that come up.
Sure. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or into the Q&A.
If you could advance one slide, MK, to the question slide, but wonder if no one has a question, wonder if I could ask one quick one.
Sure. MC.
MC.
We're really
Too
playing
many
with
M's.
each other today.
Too many M's.
Right.
You know, this is great, and a lot of information in this entire series. Obviously, sharing these decks and these links with the rest of the group would be helpful for the folks on the call. But is there any one thing that you would suggest, either from today or the previous ones, to catch up, to be ready for the next few? Because with Charlie and with MK joining, there's a lot of good stuff that really encompasses a lot of different departments across the enterprise. Any thoughts on kind of how best to prepare and who should be on the next calls?
Yeah, that's great. I think I try to do my best to just assume that everybody who's on a call is new to it, and so I try to do some recap in there. So this should have a pretty high level understanding of where we are at this time. But I do recommend, and we really try to keep them short to no more than 30 minutes, reviewing, and I think Margaret, you can provide those. The other prior series, because if you are really maybe more on the business side or you're more strategic planning side, maybe you do one of the early ones where we talk about, like I say, payer market analysis and a comment in adjusting to this new competitive landscape. If you are someone who's particularly interested or working, say, and needing to understand data management, so data custodians versus, say, data stewards or data owners, all these are different types of taxonomies and frameworks that I think the essence of it is that we need to all become much more familiar with in our industry to really be really strategically advantaged, get the strategic benefit both as an organization, but I mean, also as an individual. I don't think we can dispute that there's a lot of changes happening in our industry and in general as information workers. And one of the areas I think is unfortunately kind of neglected, and which means there's a lot of demand for it to improve upon it. And I think it's the area that not only it perhaps serves up AI, but it's also something that doesn't necessarily get disintermediated by AI so quickly, is understanding your data landscape and how you can improve the data assets in that landscape.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. We provide those links and of course the other slides. And then I think the links, if you want to kind of be up and running best as you can for our next one on March 3rd, as you see here, the links that were provided as in these slides, which we'll also be sending out, as well as those that were put into the chat, I think will give you a good sense of the PICI framework in particular, anything that relates to data provenance in terms of fire and how that plays a role in PICI framework as overall, but also just in data quality for these modern data pipelines. Any chance someone threw in a question? Help me out.
Not yet.
No? Okay. Well, I suppose we will hang on for another minute, but if no one else has questions, I will assume they have all been thoroughly addressed. Or we also can make the offer if you have any comments to share, if you've had experience yourselves implementing these type of programs, or have been attempting to do so, or in finding challenges in doing so. Maybe there's successes that you've had also internally in your organization with really addressing data quality, and particularly using as much as possible standard techniques or frameworks to do so. No. All right. Well, let me know, but this is where MB was always very helpful. He was Mr. Questions and able to hand that and share that with others. So
Yeah,
I'll hang
we
out.
miss him, but
Yeah,
he's
we
got to
miss
be
him. Well, I
somewhere.
won't. I
So
have no sympathy
I don't
for
either. So
MB
I
right now.
guess just to recap, the next one is with Charlie, correct? Charlie Harp?
Yes, March 3rd.
And so that would be very important for understanding, kind of the handoff of what to do with the data and how it can be right, fitted right for the right purpose. That's part of that. And then the next, I believe, would be with MK, which will be very informative in terms of ROI across the enterprise. So how
Yeah.
to use it strategically. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's correct. I noted that I try to cover with MK two things in particular: fit for purpose. It's very use case dependent. And then return on investment, because obviously, if there's a number of use cases and you want to build data that's appropriate to them, you have to establish what's the return on investment in prioritizing certain use cases versus others. And as we've seen, certain techniques for data quality improvement versus others.
Beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
We do
Okay,
have
guys.
someone typing. I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but we do have somebody typing, I think.
Probably just wishing me to get better.
Yeah, it's actually a
I'll take
question.
that too, though. Yeah.
How do you see the CMS data linking changes affecting data lineage?
CMS data link. Are we referring to the medical record? No, sorry, unlinked medical record. Maybe I need some. I'm sure I would feel comfortable to speak to
Yes.
that.
The answer on that
Yeah.
was yes.
Yeah, I mean, let me talk about that more generally. And because I think I kind of went over it at certain points during the presentation, that I mean, one of the values of data lineage is that it's, as we see here, it can be used for debugging in some ways. I always click on the wrong one for debugging and understand these dependencies, but ultimately it's a great technique for compliance and demonstrating in an audit compliance that you know precisely where a value that was, say, loaded directly or was derived through computations within something that's needed for the purposes of proving that you've accurately, say, abstracted a medical record or derived clinical data from a medical record. All of that is helped, not just its compliance and the ability to show that origin and that pathway, and ultimately, like we said here with provenance, where you can actually add verifiability to that by data lineage, as much as just getting the data out of the medical record system using kind of techniques that are enabled by capturing structured data and knowing where to go based on the data lineage you have available. Let me add one extra layer to that, is that I'm giving a very simplistic view here of data lineage and provenance. I'm looking at it really just say from a data source level, but it is something that you can do drill downs and roll ups, just like you can other types of analytics, where we can get very specific to a particular data element or an attribute, and even the instance of that element attribute, let's say when it was changed. So all depending on your use case, you can determine how much resource you need to put to. So certainly something that has a lot of regulatory compliance expectation requirement, you would obviously, that could perhaps justify an additional expense or allocation of resources to really getting to a more detailed, granular, high sensitivity demonstration of your data sources. So I hope that generally got the system. I think ultimately it will help, and in fact I would think it's even necessary. I don't think I would comfortably go into an audit with CMS on these types of mandates without having a very mature, or let's see, maturing data lineage program. Okay, great. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for your time and patience today. Margaret, I think we will be getting these slides out shortly. And I think we try to ensure that everybody who actually attended today would also get a particular email when the next one is coming out on March 3rd, so that you could be able to register directly through email. But we'll also be posting on LinkedIn, where we see most of you have come from.
Beautiful.
That's right.
Great.
Well done.
Okay, everyone. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.